Or do I need to do that? Because I always forget. Super excited to be sharing a virtual stage with these amazing, amazing folks in this mental health space. The description for this panel was shared online. Sonia had it up a little bit earlier today. So it is about the intersection of mental health and SDE spaces. But Shauna, who was one of our amazing panelists today, actually shared something on Instagram. And when I read it, I was like, this is what it's about. So she doesn't know that I'm doing this. I'm just going to read it for everyone because it's an amazing introduction to the work that we are going to be doing for the next hour. So excited to briefly, so thank you for your brief stay with us, Shauna, come out of hibernation for the necessary exploration of mental health, wellness, and the new world of self-directed education. It's important that we contend with all the ways colonial ideas seep into all the systems we navigate or disengage from. Schooling, our concept of smarts, and often the way we allow ourselves and the children in our care to imagine themselves too, must be severed from colonial gaze. Further, those of us committed to liberation and individual freedom often gain comfort and space for growth in sharing ideas about how we nourish our minds as we deschool or unschool. And I was like, yes, that is it. We also shared the bios of all the amazing panelists. So what I won't do is read those to you, but I do want to offer space for everyone to introduce themselves. So Shauna, Sonia, and Z, take as much time, as little time as you would like to just introduce yourselves, and then we will jump in with some questions. For everyone who's here, if you have questions around this topic of mental health and SDE spaces, please drop those in the comments and we will do our best to address as many as possible within the next hour. So I'm going to mute. I'm going to pass the mic to Shauna for her introduction.
Hey, y'all. I'm super excited to be here. I've been here since the morning, soaking it all up and connecting with folks. My name is Shauna Murray Brown. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am located in the Baltimore City area on Piscataway, Conoy land. And I identify as a liberation-focused community healer, trained as an integrative psychotherapist and social worker. And my work is to support folks in remembering how to heal themselves. And the way that I do that is by centering Blackness 5,000% of the time as a pathway to reimagining how we identify healing space, how we talk about mental health, how we talk about being together, and what it will take to create a liberated existence. I'm happy to be here. And I'm an unschooling parent. Y'all saw me with my 4-year-old throughout the experience, and hopefully she won't bum rush me while we are doing what we're doing.
We welcome the kids in this space, so we hope we at least get to see your face again. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to pass the mic to Z.
Hola, I'm Sanaida, also known by Z. Make it easier, shorter. I primarily identify as a mama. I'm Latina. I am located in the native land of Chumash, so Simi Valley, California. A very conservative town, so I'm here to make waves. I'm in my little office. We're definitely embracing the self-directed experience. I bring it into my practice. I've been doing this for some time now, since 2014. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. The training that I got definitely got me into liberated movement within myself, and I believe that this is life work. So the way that I integrate self-healing is by helping those remember who they are, like the plantitas that we integrate. I love gardening and regenerating our soil and connecting my own children back into our lands. So this is how I integrate therapy back into my practice, is by encouraging our biological uniqueness, getting to know ourselves, how our sensory system is impacted by all these changes in our environment, and how we can acknowledge our uniqueness. I'm a little nervous. I haven't actually spoken in a panel in a while. I've been taking care of myself and my family, been in private practice for the last 2.5 years. Being a Latina entrepreneur has been quite challenging. So definitely hanging on to this, and I'm very, very honored to be here and to share my experience. What really brought me here was intergenerational healing, my own background. My brother, who passed away just last year, but he was part of, unfortunately, our healthcare system that did not acknowledge his uniqueness and was labeled too many labels to keep up with. So I'm here to bring some clarity.
Oh no. I think she froze. So we're gonna pass the mic to Sonia for her introduction. And hopefully we'll get feedback.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch from the main room host to whatever I will be in this panel. I do not know where this will lead me. I'm a facilitator. I'm an agile learning facilitator for children age 5 to 10 in green school in Romania, in Cluj-Napoca. And I am obsessed with music. And through music, I found a voice when I didn't have one. And through music, I found the courage to be who I am and to speak out about, hey, I'm Sonia, I have depression. It sucks and it doesn't in the same time. And recently, anxiety became a friend of mine. So I realized while being in a training of psychodrama specialist, how important it is for psychologists and therapists to work on their own background and on their traumas and on their wounds to become better professionals. I never wanted, or I do not want to be a therapist. I want to use that knowledge for me as an educator. I was wondering, hey, if we are doing this with therapists that are basically working 1 hour per week or per month with a client, why not to do this for educators? So I have this feeling that all educators should understand their wounds in order to understand how they project them on their children. So when I started to go deeper in my therapy process, I understood that I need to be open about this with my kids. And it started with a song and with a t-shirt that someone on Zoom was wearing. And it led us to a mental health journey, which is not what I expected. It rolled down like a snowball. I'm still learning about it. And I'm now in the United States for another month to research mental health and self-directed education. So what once was my obsession for Linkin Park, because I felt like they are singing my pain, become a reality when Chester, the vocal from Linkin Park, died by suicide. And I owned that people need to speak about it, so I'm going to speak about mine. And then it became, oh, I'm doing mental health with kids in self-directed education. What is this? So it found me. I didn't choose it. I do not want to be a therapist or work in mental health with intention, but I found myself enjoying it immensely. So basically, I'm a facilitator. I'm not a parent, but I feel like I'm parenting my inner child right now.
Thank you for sharing. I'm not sure how to repin Z so that everyone can see her, because she was able to make it back in. So Sonia or Bria, if you're able to do that, that would be awesome. So Z mentioned that she's kind of nervous, and this is not, y'all who've been around know how we roll in these spaces. This is not like a super formal, we're going to send you a list of 20 questions in advance so you can prepare all your answers and make sure you say the right things. It's not that, right? We invited you here because you already have the expertise and the knowledge to share in this space, and we knew that you would be able to add to this space. So I'm just going to throw the idea, right? That general topic of when you think about the intersection of mental health and SDE, what does that bring up for you? And this is for anyone can jump in. And again, for those of you who are in the audience, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll make sure that we'll address those as well.
Yeah, just introductions in general, just make me barf. Having to talk about myself, just having to talk about myself in general. But I knew that it was important to have a voice. I think that's been my entire journey, to find my voice, and through my voice, I've helped others find theirs. And my journey started. I was kind of forced to become a marriage counselor within my parents. So I said, well, I'm good at this, so might as well continue the journey. And I was really thrown into the healthcare system quite early because my brother was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, all these different type of conditions that in our culturas are not such a thing. But because we had to assimilate to this lifestyle, and to have to accommodate, I'm always still like, what do I have to say the right thing? Do I have to present myself in a certain way? Because then my Latina is going to come out too much. And I'm really allowing and acknowledging myself to embrace that. And it's so honorable to be here around people that like, oh my gosh, I knew there was a community. I knew there were people out there. I started the self-directed journey long time ago. I have a 21-year-old son and now a 16-year-old daughter. And I started all over again. There's an age gap between them, 11 years between my two sets of kids. And I've been unschooling my youngest ones since the beginning. And I knew this was the calling. I never had the language for it until recently, because I was stuck in the system so I could survive, and going to the schooling and saying, well, they trust people with degrees, so I'll go get a degree. And realize that it's not really it. We're born with our medicine, we're born with our gifts. And I believe in helping those reintegrate that through movement, dance, singing, through whatever your lineage calls you to, and acknowledging our history and really, sitting with ourselves, which is really hard in our society, just staying still. So I do integrate that, in terms of just staying within ourselves, allowing our processes to just show us the direction that we'd like to take. So really, really appreciate being around other humans that are part of this movement, so that I sometimes feel lost. I'm still kind of feel new to this. So it's incredible to integrate it in my practice and to have people to work with that find me and want to work in understanding liberation for themselves and through their own education system, and how to break out of those chains that have been created for those that don't meet the criteria. I went into this field for representation, and I'm still trying to mold within that by creating community. We're lacking that. So I'm really hoping to be part of, I wasn't able to log in earlier to be part of this earlier, but I'm hoping to log in with my family later on the weekend, and excited to hear about everything else that's going on.
Thanks so much, Z. That was dope. To Damari, the question was, when we think about SDE and mental health, what comes up for us? And, when I think about SDE and mental health, I really think about just the decolonial journey altogether and what happens in our body, minds, and spirits as we're going through that. So many of the earlier sessions, there was there was a chat conversation about like, how are we feeling about the pandemic, right? That was a really poignant way to begin having a conversation about our mental health. And so when I think about the intersection, I think about it in many ways. I think about, so part of my role in this particular season is redefining what healing is when a therapist sits across from a descendant of Africans enslaved in the US. And that process is, and it requires that we deschool and unschool, like that it requires that part of the process for the therapist that I have the honor of holding space for. And so I think about it in that way, right? That because self-directed education really gets at the heart of everything about our day-to-day lives, I automatically start to think about it in that regard. But when I think about us as human beings trying to parent others and ourselves, when I think about the process of deschooling and unschooling and the aloneness that can be felt in the space where society is really excellent at telling us that what we're doing is wrong, and our community it hasn't yet necessarily gone through their own unschooling experience or journey or even know what that is. What comes up for me are those original wisdoms that each of us have the responsibility to explore in our own lineage. And so I see the questions, but I want to go ahead and offer space for Sonia to give the reflection so we can continue to vibe.
For me, this intersection is not something visible, is not something that I look for, because for me, self-directed education is come as you are, and I am like this. And because we do not speak about many things in my culture, they're called taboo topics, almost all the relevant elements of our life. We don't speak about death. We don't speak about being sick. We don't speak about grieving. We don't speak about losing a friend to whatever, you outgrow the relationship. We don't speak about those. We don't speak about feelings. And I grew up in a family where we don't speak about feelings. We hide them in whatever we can, in whatever way we can. And for me, being in a self-directed space is a safe space, because I can be who I am without pretending, without smiling. If I'm dying inside, I don't want to smile, just not to offend people or make them uncomfortable because they do not know how to be around sad people. This is my reality, and I am no longer willing to accommodate everyone other than me. And holding space for me as a human being made me a better facilitator, because the kids are learning from each other as well. They are learning from me, but they are learning from me not just from what I say, but from who I am and how I show up in the space and how I hold space for myself. And if I'm true to myself, maybe they will learn that being true to yourself is acceptable in a space like that. And people are telling me in my country that I keep living in a bubble. But this bubble is growing. It's the first bubble. It's growing in age and it's growing in size. So just wait for that bubble to pop, because they will occupy their own space. They don't need anyone to give freedom. They have freedom in their own selves. So for me, come as you are is me being totally open with my children, because this is who I am, and I need to make sure that they don't mirror this. It's not theirs to take, it's not theirs to heal, it's mine. And it's not there, they are not uncomfortable anymore with my sadness, and they can accommodate whatever feeling. And I really enjoyed in one moment, they had a tough argument on Pokemon cards, really tough argument. And it was a 7 years old with an 8 years old. And one of the kids said, "You telling me this is like you are telling me not to be depressed. This is not understandable. How can you say that?" So they already took my reality and put it in their own speech and reality and examples. And it was not easy, because I also have questions. Am I doing right that I'm who I am? Should I smile more, or should I make them believe that I'm okay for them not to worry about me? Because sometimes I work on tough things in my therapy, and sometimes I'm staying in those feelings more than I want. And I feel bad that they see me like that. And then I realize that sometimes it takes time. And I don't want to be who I'm not. And somehow this led us to a huge journey about mental health. And my team is called 21 Pilots because they are obsessed with 21 Pilots. And if you know or don't know the band, they sing a lot about mental health and mental illnesses and depression and suicide. And I've learned with my kids how to say out loud, suicide. This is a word that I was not saying. I was replacing it with so many other words. And somehow I started to be more comfortable with whom I am because I realized that they accept me. So there are people out there that they accept people like me. Also, when the Alliance proposed me to work with them, I said, hey, but did you take into consideration that I'm in a different time zone and I am depressed and sometimes this is challenging you? Like, I may not respond to an email because it's so freaking energy consuming sometimes and I'm overthinking this. And here I am, showing myself.
I just want to say thank you for doing that, Sonia. So I don't even know if you realize this, but we had an interaction recently because I consider myself to be neurotypical and I come from, I'm around all these Black folks who, we have to be this strong Black woman. So we hold that. So we don't share our true feelings a lot of the times, right? Well, a lot of us are in therapy and working through that. But so I got used to the greeting of, you see someone, you're like, hey, how are you? Right. And so I asked Sonia and she said some things. And then the next person came on and said, hey, how are you? And Sonia said, I'm not answering that question anymore. And that was the first time that I ever in my life considered like what it might be like for someone to have to think through, like, how do I answer this? Should I say okay? If I don't say okay, are they going to understand? And I was like, I'm not asking that question anymore. I'm just going to say, hey, it's nice to see you. And if there's something you need to talk about, I can or cannot hold space for you right now, because I had never, ever considered how unfair that question might be and the load that it can put on someone else until you said that. So I appreciate you and letting me into your bubble, because that is what, for me, like this community is about. And this self-directed journey is learning. Like I never thought about that because I hadn't been around someone who was willing to share that part of themselves with me. So thank you. Thank you for that.
One of the things that came up for me as you were sharing, Sonia, and further in your reflection, Damari, is that, I try to help myself remember, like, when was there a time where asking the question, how are you doing, was naturally embedded in the way that my particular people engaged, right? Like, what was the severance point where my ancestors could no longer actually hold space for the answer, right? Because the reason why we say how you doing in passing, right? We've been socialized to do that because of capitalism and oppression and the function for society to keep us with these shallow relationships and not really being able to connect. And so one of the questions, hold on, I was reading all the questions. One second. Hold on. So Sarah's question, what can we say about living through this time of crisis of the pandemic, the climate crisis, and the reckoning of oppression in all of our systems? I had a couple thoughts about that. And the first is that my community has been in a perpetual state of crisis, right? But what I can say about this particular time is that the thing about the pandemic, is that it made everybody have to have like a shared experience of crisis that perhaps certain privileged populations weren't required to pay attention to. And so what I can say about it is that it isn't uncommon or like surprising to me that all of us are really coming to this emotional reckoning. This mental health professionals, healers, teachers, mamas, babas, parents and siblings, all of us, right, are really going through this. And the other question that I saw was really about like, well, how do we hold the space, right, for folks at home? And I can tell you, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, for me personally, I was depressed, and I was so anxious, powerfully anxious, powerfully overwhelmed, afraid of everything, and really the ever presence of death. That I know, Sonia, you said we don't talk about it, right? The ever presence of death was at the forefront of my mind. And it wasn't until I let go of the expectations that have been placed on me by society, right? Okay, Shauna, the timeline that you set for school, that don't mean nothing. You know, that's not what's important. Shauna, no, it's okay that the house is dirty. Okay, honey, like it's fine. Like, no, like you really need to focusing back in on being in my body and contending with what my needs were, allowed me the space to be able to get to a point where I could hear myself again. And so what I can say is that the way that I hold my own mental health is I've had to reevaluate the expectations that are placed on myself pre-pandemic versus now. I've had to create a spaciousness in my life around all the things that I say are important, but really aren't priority, right? They are important because of some other narrative that I have yet to undo or reprogram. So spaciousness is one. Normalizing slowing down in my day-to-day experience with my little one, adding her into the activity of movement, of prayer and ritual, and our spiritual activity of meditation and shaking, being really okay with the fact that she is going to see me cry and she's going to see me angry, and it's going to be a learning experience about how emotions aren't me, but they are an expression of my soul's experience in this moment, and that's okay, right? I feed in certain activities for her, videos for her to watch. The thing that's coming up for me right now is Daniel Tiger and the way that he likes to growl, all right? Daniel Tiger helps me teach my baby about the ever presence of big emotion and how it can transcend. And as she gets older, she's learning with me. Mommy doesn't feel good right now, so you want to sit here and do some meditation with mommy? Oh, Imara, I see that you're having a bad day. Let's shake it out together. Or she'll see me. I will shake it out. Okay, she don't want to shake it out. So normalizing like the embodied experience of getting back into our bodies is another way. It's not all the ways, but those are two.
It's beautiful, Shauna. I think want to kind of integrate into that. I haven't got a chance to go into the questions because I am neurodivergent and I get distracted very easily. I'm deaf from my left ear, so like all these sensory things, definitely affect us. So when I talk to the people I work with, is when they ask me holding space, I work remotely, so technically I can't really hold space. Even when I was in an office environment, they did that. It wasn't me. They chose to confront something that wasn't working anymore. So when we discuss spaces, well, our space has been polluted and we haven't really done it. So how can we really start to cleanse that? And it's taking small steps. The first thing I encourage people is go barefoot. Find a piece of land that's some dirt. Dig your toes in the dirt. Connect with the earth. Really ask what you need, how you can support it. We're very similar. We are made up of almost all the compositions of our environment. So we're going to feel the effects. This pandemic, I think it's happened before in our history. And for me personally, I think I was already through transcending by being pulled away from the systems and not relying on them, and realizing that, oh, this was bound to happen. Extracting our earth at the rate that we've been doing, it's bound to respond. And as cyclical creatures, our sensory system is adapting, changing, shifting. So the DSM, in my opinion, is very limiting. It was created by people that didn't look like us, didn't act like us, and it's still a work in progress. So I really encourage, when it comes to healing and reintegrating, is that we didn't really create all of this. So it's going to look different for everybody. It's going to take time that we are trying to reclaim, because our time is being sold off. In order for us to reclaim that, we have to, it's a life work, and it requires community, something that we've been removed away from as well. So all these feelings are all, I believe, natural, in a way that our body tells us, pay attention. Okay. The way I describe anxiety is, it is your spidey senses. It's your body's way of saying there's something going on. I like to cuss, by the way, so it's one way of expression, and it's one way of saying, like, get the fuck out of that situation, or you better fight that shit. That's our body's natural response to get us out of the situation. So if our environment's hurting, depleting, we're feeling all of that. So all these labels, depression, anxiety, PTSD, it's just our body's way of saying there's something going on. There's a lot going on. How do we describe it? How do we explain it? The language is evolving and changing. This is why I find it very limiting. This is why I use movement, like you were saying, Shauna, and even singing, connecting, just breathing. We forget to breathe. Just sitting with our breath, something we take for granted, something that I have to remember constantly as I'm constantly holding my breath. And that's just a survival reaction. We're still trying to survive, is our way, like holding our breath is a way to handle, certain distressful situations. But it also raises our cortisol, and cortisol can be quite toxic to our bodies. So just understanding even these elements can help us realize, oh, I'm quite a unique being. It's just adapting and changing to all these things that are coming at me. And by me allowing myself to feel that, I've been able to actually it helped me, because motherhood, parenthood has really brought me to this discovery that it's hard to describe into words, having the ability to transcend through that and be chosen. I feel like I was chosen to be a parent, to be a mom. And I'm have to adapt myself to each of these individuals, unique individuals, and also allow myself to be myself. That's our environment. Every single plant, every plantita is different, unique, needs different time of sun, water, minerals. So each of us is like that. And in our society, we've taken that away. So I'm glad to hear that there's a lot of elders out there seeking to understand their own lineage, how they can promote their own well-being, how they can create those waves, that ripple effect. We are a ripple effect. We are energy. So it's exciting to see such a movement, and also be part of feeling things that we don't really have the words for yet. I like to use this pillow. I'll show you guys as a concept, because our feelings can look as, it's like the little iceberg, the tip of the iceberg could be happy, but a lot of things can factor in. It can feel like all these different things. So emotions are like moving water, they are your organs communicating and sharing information back and forth. So emotions are very measurable. I tell people that they're not made believe. We can measure them. That's why we have medication for things, bioidentical things that our bodies can adapt to when it's not having the necessary things to, like nutrients, when we're missing nutrients. So our brains and our bodies are not separate. They're connected. They feed off each other. They connect together. And when they're not working, they'll start to tell us through diseases, through messages that only we can understand.
Shauna, I saw you over there going through the comments. Was there a question that you saw?
I'm writing answers to all the questions. I was making sure that everyone has the space to, to share on the panel. But yeah, so I wanted to address Raquel, Bethany, and Carissa's question. So Raquel made this really heartfelt reflection. Thank you, Raquel, for sharing so vulnerably the experience of not feeling safe, not feeling like, like because you have so many emotions, so many things going on, and being self-directed, doing unschooling, you're with your children all the time. You mentioned your child drawing a photo of you sad, and really trying to navigate that. One of the things that came up for me was, a few things that my godmother told me when I went through an African-centered rites of passage process. And what she said to me is that every moment with a child is a teaching moment. And so that immediately came up for me because it made me think about the part of what I think it's Carice, that I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Is it Carice? Okay. We try to do people's names right. You asked the question about balancing big emotions and gentle attachment. And this actually connects to my answer or thoughts about what you shared, Raquel. Is that one, yes, I can relate to that, feeling like you would like to have some space to be able to feel and process through, and not having that and having to be in a constant space of holding for your child can be emotionally taxing. And you're wondering, well, what is my child learning here? And the first thing that came up for me, Carice, was that we don't balance it. Right, that we let go of this sort of idea of being able to have perfect balance, and that we contend with the fact that sometimes we're going to focus on this one thing. I mean, this is one of the things I had to like really ground and around unschooling, when I was like, okay, so wait, what you mean we're not going to do math and science and history in the same day? Like, we might spend all of the time, if my child really is interested in just like cooking, that we might not get to the planets when, right? So when we're shattering the concept of perfect balance in the way we're teaching or holding space for learning, that same thing applies to life. And that is that we're not balanced, we're human beings. And so there will be times that might be more challenging, but to what you said, Raquel, one of the underlying things that I think is super important and in alignment with what Z said is community, right? And that's why when I was sharing earlier about some of my personal challenges with unschooling is the isolation associated with it. I believe that the underlying medicine for that is figuring out who you can call on to hold space, and perhaps creating some spaciousness around what space could look like. Maybe that might mean your space is when you in the shower, like provided that your children don't also come into the space when you're trying to take a shower like mine does, but we lock the door. Okay, creating spaciousness around how responsive we need to be when our children are needing us, being okay with the emotional responses of what we call temper tantrums, right? Making it okay for the child to experience that level of disappointment and recognizing that you're worthy for it, and using that drawing whenever you feel like you have the capacity to be able to teach later, to talk about, like, let's talk about the emotion of sadness, and to the extent that you feel comfortable, are there other times when you feel sad, right? Bringing in things like what Z shared, that pillow. I really think that we need to expand the kind of education for just everybody about the tools that many mental health professionals have, and just embed that into the way that we parent. And I'm happy to support that if y'all is interested in that. But to take that pillow and, maybe, or there's a chart or a poster that shows like the different emotions, right? To use it as a time, like maybe we could create a story. Let's create a story together. Let's draw some pictures together about what that process might look like for whoever is parenting. I think it's Raquel. So for Raquel, for mommy, if you go by mommy, or parent, for for you to transform from being sad to happy. Let's imagine together and create a story about it, and embed some of the steps and tools to care for yourself. And then you're including your child in how you're caring for yourself, right? You can embed that into the day-to-day experiences. If you know what, going by the water might help. And if you are in Baltimore, anywhere near this really cold, So going to the frozen river, if that works for you, embedding that into that experience. And then the last question that I'll answer in this period, Bethany, you asked a question about reactive attachment and the experiences that especially children that have navigated or had to endure the child welfare system or perhaps foster care have engaged. And the baseline answer that I have to that is spaciousness. I know I said that already. But oftentimes it's because we have so many expectations for what should happen for a given child based off of the experiences that we had, that if we create an allowance for the child to be able to articulate what they're interested in working on, or perhaps the focus is just on establishing the kind of relationship so that the child can be able to express their emotions. So teaching embodiment and things like that might be a focus for the child so that they can get to some of the other content. And I will say that because my mother-in-law is a foster parent and has been for many years. And there have been many times where it's just like, just let go of the expectation that you have and meet the person where they are. What are their needs? And let's focus in any learning experiences around that. I know that was a lot of words. I'm gonna be quiet now and drink some water.
Taking a break. Sonia, were there any questions in the chat that you saw that you wanted to address?
Yeah, I'm gonna address the COVID one and how this impacted us. As my group, I'm speaking about my reality, not generalizing here, because for me, the pandemic was a blessing because it was the hardest period of my life. And I hit rock bottom and I had nowhere to go. I could not go lower. So I was either going in front at the same level, if either going up, and I choose to go up. For me, I thought happiness means to belong to a family and to be in a family and to create a family. And I created a school because I didn't feel safe at home and I felt safe at my school. And I wanted to replicate that feeling for other children. I was in a typical school, but it did not matter to me. It mattered that I felt safe because there were a few people there that made me feel safe, helped me feel safe, hold space for me. And everything that I wanted was to, I had this dream of being an workaholic, and I become one. And I realized that is making me very, very sick. And then I started to complain about it, as you do in these times. Yeah, you dream about working hard, you work hard, you complain, you're not happy. So basically for me, it was from 2006 to 2019, I constantly said, I want to stay at home. I want to catch a sunrise and sunset at home. I don't want to be at work. I want to be at home. I want to go home. I do not want to travel anymore for my work. So pandemic hit, I was home. Realized really fast, home is not nice. Home is not nice. So I was surprised about my reality. I got a divorce after that, but I was surprised about my reality. And I realized that, okay, so if I don't like home, I will make it, I will try to improve it as much as I can. And I did. And I went to all the books about happiness and about joy, and not realizing that I have that in me. I am a family of one. I do not need other people. I was a codependent person because I lived things that I don't wish to anyone. And I said, I'm strong. I can overcome this. Let's focus on something else. Let's save the world. Let's build a school and save kids, because that's what we do with traumas. And little did I know that this pandemic and my kids will save me, because I was so focused on accommodate everyone's emotions. So at the beginning, there were so much misinformation. If you remember, no one knew what that was. In Romania, people were like, you are not allowed to walk your dog, but if you are going outside with your dog, you need the paws of your dog not to touch the ground. The level of misinformation was so high that nobody knew what the heck is going on. And for some reason, everybody was speaking about old people being affected by the disease. So my kids were not afraid for them. They were afraid for their grandparents. So I took the virus and I played with it. We created characters. We transformed this virus into a friend, into a country, into an island, into a car. We started to speak about, oh my God, these stories are so beautiful. I would buy a book with these stories. And then the next step was, let's find people who can draw these stories and transform them into illustrations of a book. So we have a book. We wrote a book. It's online. They were 6, 7, 8. They were writing 5, 6 lines about COVID. They enjoyed the process. They played with the word so much that they were not afraid of it. Then we started to discover, like, it was a Zoom call, because we were always on Zoom. It was a Zoom call in which one of my kids had a t-shirt with Billie Eilish. And I said, oh, you have a t-shirt with Billie Eilish, how nice. And she was like, you know Billie Eilish, but you're old. And in my mind was, yeah, okay, not that old. And she was, how do you know Billie Eilish? And I was, well, she was on a poster with 21 Pilots for a concert in Milan, and I wanted to go. So then I searched who she is, because I didn't know if this is genuine, because it was just 21 Pilots with a name that I didn't know. So I searched for her and I noticed that she has a big crowd. So I just know her. Who's 21 Pilots? And then I just showed them a video with 21 Pilots. And what is this all about? They started to like, oh, now I need to explain what is this all about. Because I was not comfortable at that time to explain what that was all about. And we started to make fun of chlorine because we were disinfecting everything. And chlorine is one of the songs on an album where Tyler, the lead vocalist, finds some faith in his journey with depression and suicide. So that album was about fears and hope, and it's full of metaphors. All the videos, all the songs. So they realized that we are not an English-speaking school, so we speak in Romanian. So I was supposed to translate all the lyrics. They become obsessed with 21 Pilots, and shortly, whenever we were like, let's do 21 Pilots again, and I was like, again? Yeah, we can learn English with it, come on. And then we went to the words and we opened a Jamboard to see what is this song about. And I wrote down keywords that they were saying, and we went to the 5 signs of emotional suffering, and we tried to identify them in the lyrics. And then we went to, but why this feeling is overwhelming, but why this happens? And we went to all the discussions about emotions, and slowly we went to talk about resilience and 5 behaviors that are helping us to go from that situation in which we have emotional suffering, in which we suffer. And in a moment, one of my kids stopped and said, looking at all the Jamboard that we were filling in for days now, but son, you're feeling like this? Like all of them? And they was like, yeah, baby. And he was, but how do you do it? And there was, sometimes I don't even know. Sometimes I don't want to be alive. But sometimes I remember that I have a meeting with you. Sometimes I remember that I love snowboarding. Sometimes I remember that I love mountain biking. These discussions, they keep going for 3 years now, because this is the freaking 3rd year of COVID. So we went to talking about 4 types of health, because of course they were like asking, but what is COVID after all? What is influencing you? What type of disease is this? Where does it hurt? And we started to speak about body and physical health. Then we went to emotional health. Then slowly, because of my depression, we went to mental health and mental illnesses, because it's fancy to speak about mental health, but it's not so fancy to speak about mental illnesses, because then you are more judged and people think they understand, but actually when you show up with a mental illness, they don't. The majority of the people in my life, that they don't. Like in Romania, the law says that everyone who works with children every 6 months needs to go to have all the checkups, including physical ones, including emotional ones. The psychiatrist was not there, so they gave me a ton of papers to fill in. It was a new therapist that didn't know me. So I wrote down, it was a very bad month for me. It was the commemoration of my brother's death, so I was even darker than usual. And she was like calling me, oh my God, you're a survivor, congratulations. How do you do this? And then I realized that she was saying that she needs to announce my employer and I will not be able to work. And I was like, yeah, you do that. I'm my own employer, you do that. And we'll see. So I realized that you are supposed to work in mental health. You are supposed to see me before labeling me. You are supposed to see me, not to look at some papers in a bad period of time. I was suffering. And you see me at my lowest and you say that I'm not okay to show up to people. Why? Someone said in the chat, maybe we should unlearn the definition of what it is a disease or what is healthy. Because if you're labeling an illness because you don't understand this type of diversity that a lot of people have, maybe it's not an illness after all. Maybe this is who I am, and maybe there are other people like me, and you are uncomfortable with it. So you label it to be able to take it out of your box. So I'm going to put myself in that box. And I'm saying, this is my spot, and I'm here, and I'm working with these kids, and I'm going to teach these kids about 21 pilots. And if they have a question, what is suicide? I'm going to say what it was for me when I was 9 and I wanted to die. And that was my first. So I'm going to say it. And I'm going to be careful with my words, because I'm going to be careful of not traumatizing my kids, because I know how that feels. And I know how it is to be responsible as a kid for an adult's feelings. And they are not responsible, neither for my feelings, neither for my pain, neither for my trauma, neither for my healing. Though I received so many resources from them, like we have this mindfulness corner, and one of the kids said, I'm tired of these cards, so I created a notebook for us. And especially for you, Son, whenever you are sad, you need to go to this notebook. And she didn't know how to write. And she asked her mother to write. And it was like, this kid was amazingly resilient. We talked all our period in which we were on Zoom, we talked about mental health without knowing. It started with, let's talk about COVID, and you have a nice t-shirt. It went to all of this. And for this moment, they are able to recognize many signs of emotional suffering. They are able to hold space to each other. And when I announced the parents that I'm leaving and I'm coming to US for this journey, I was afraid. I was afraid that they will be sad that I'm leaving their kids, and they will be pissed, and they will whatever. And the response was, they are fine, they are resilient. This is what you worked for. They will be able to handle the stress. And when they were not able to handle the stress, I made a video and I said, you guys, do you know what stress is? I feel it. It has this. And they started to put it down on the paper and draw it. And in a moment, one of my kids said out loud, oh, but that is why I'm annoying mom all the time, because I'm stressed and I cannot find words for this. So I'm acting like this because actually I'm suffering. So for me, the pandemic was, I'm abandoning anything and everything I'm just focusing on, hey, what do you want to do today? Can we see another video? And we saw another video and another video and another video. And we had one family leaving because you cannot teach kids English with a band that is not for their age, and you cannot talk about mental health with them because they are too young. And I'm okay. I was okay because I'm not uncomfortable anymore with the uncomfortable feelings. I know that they are a pain in the ass, but they will fucking go and leave me alone. And eventually, this is who I am. If you think you can learn from me and you can accept my influence, come join me. Also, I have my own boundaries, and I've learned from them how to hold boundaries, because helping them to learn about boundaries made me realize, ooh, I'm not doing what I'm saying that I'm doing, and I'm actually not true to my teaching. So boundaries, the biggest discovery of my life. And now I can say, actually, I just saw this. I started a challenge, and with this I will finish. I started the challenge of 1,000 hours in nature, which I finished on Christmas Eve. But I really like the idea of tracking, because a kid without control in childhood holds a bit of control. And for a self-directed facilitator, that is a pain in the ass. So I track my own progress. And other than that, with nature counting hours, I did self-care and self-love. If 3 years ago you would ask me what is self-love or self-care, I would not be able to answer to that question. I was like, I'm taking care of myself. Of course, I'm doing so many things. I work in my dreams, I'm building this and this and that. But actually I don't. And I'm learning from them, with them. And the pandemic forced me to go so low that I said, okay, I cannot go lower than this. So I think we should just forgive ourselves, because we are freaking tired. This is the 3rd year, you guys.
Go, Shauna, go.
Okay. So, all right. So a few things, questions, and something that Sonia, you actually touched on that started some conversation here that I wanted to illuminate. Someone said, that some therapists are actually, they have learned that some therapists are willing to just put generalized anxiety disorder, even if it's not actually true. And so I just want to amplify some of what Z said earlier about the vast limitations of colonial structures to try to get us to try to get money, when really what we need is healing and caring for. I did drop in a link for therapythatliberates.com, which is a collective of mental health practitioners across the globe that I have trained in decolonial and anti-colonial ideals. So they are all for SDE and have had the honor of reading the book that's the bomb that I can't, Raising Free People.
Aquila, Raising Free People.
I can't think of it. There was another question about redefining health that also, Sonia, you mentioned, and I wanted to say that I believe that each of us have the responsibility of excavating and exploring who our pre-colonial ancestors were and what concepts of wellness and healing existed pre-colonial, without romanticizing. So I'm not saying make it like everything that our ancestors did was the bomb, because it wasn't, but there are some really when I talk about reminding people how to heal themselves or remembering how to heal themselves, I'm talking about a remembering that is not confined by space and time. And so if Joni, when you asked, how have we considered, or can we redefine health? I'm going to throw it back at you, and I'm going to say, if you contend with what you know to be healthy based off of your cultural lineage and the experiences that you've had there, then we can start to redefine what is healthy. Oftentimes the systems that cause harm, their effort is to try to decide what is normal, and we need to shatter those concepts, but we start by doing that within. other thing that I wanted to say too, when we're talking about the function of pathology, is that yes, many people feel more comfortable because they no longer feel that level of aloneness. They feel like that something is wrong with them, when really what's wrong is society. And oftentimes, so we're diagnosing individuals as very individualistic, which is in alignment with European structured European worldview, specifically in white supremacy culture. But if we start to reconnect to pre-colonial ideas and the ways that we're thinking about the world, and we figure out a way to teach that to our children, then we can collectively start to conceptualize what is normal for me, what is normal for my community, what is the joy and health and healing that we're trying to get to. And the last thing that I want to say, I think, is oftentimes when we don't want to talk about like our big emotions, and some of us, I even think in the SDE community, I've found we get to SDE as a way, not only because we want to get to liberation, but also because we're trying to protect our children from the world. And the reality is that we can't get to liberation if we're not willing to tell our babies the truth, but we can be strategic and create a liberatory mindset, right, within them by selecting a dope-ass therapist. I cuss too. By selecting a dope-ass therapist that has an anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, liberatory framework, so that what you're doing isn't being undone in the therapy space, right? Helping our children see that sometimes it is a unique experience that's happening within us that has been pathologized. Sometimes it's the actual society, and we're responding to a colonial construct that's causing our illness. It's not our illness, it's the illness of society. And so how do we continue to mend and reimagine so that we can create a collective, collaborative space? And SDE is the answer to that. And that's all I'm going. I think that's it. I think.
And she checks her notebook like, wait a minute, did I have anything else? Yeah, so we are.
And Susan said it wouldn't be either. Oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. But it wouldn't be either or. Oftentimes the function of diagnosis is to navigate the colonial constructs that we're in. And so I'm not saying that we should throw away the DSM. Well, I do believe we should throw away the DSM-4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in any future one. But we need to be strategic. And that's why we have to partner with people that understand these systems as we are creating and imagining a new system. So we have to do both and until we can create a completely different way of engaging and normalizing whatever health is for us, depending on our lineage, experience, and culture. All right, I'm done for real.
So look, we are like 3 minutes over time, but I did want to offer Z, if you had any words that you wanted to leave us with, I wanted to allow you space to do that. But thank you all, amazing panelists, for being here.
I try my best to keep up with all the questions. I can't. It just
don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that. But to reiterate, the re-traumatizing does exist. Okay, take your time to find the person that will be willing to journey with you. It's your journey. Okay, I believe as a provider, I'm here to provide a service, an offering. It's interaction, it's this change, it's a collaboration. I know that the teachings, like you were saying, Shauna, are very colonized. So just take your time, read the profiles. I know that it's taking us time because the resources are limited. I am just relearning how to do WordPress. So there's been a lot of, people that are trying to represent. Our resources have been taken away, so we're trying our best. But they're out there. We're out there trying our best to reintegrate and allow uniqueness to flourish, because we're reclaiming our lands, and I'm thankful for that. So that's it. I don't have much. I have a lot to say, but one day I'll say it in a platform that it just connects with me. But thank you for having me here.
This was awesome. Thank you all. If you haven't had a chance to go through the chat, there's a lot of conversations that were amazing and resources that were shared in the chat as well, in terms of just being able to find these supports that are for the unschoolers and their families. So make sure that you check that out. We are closing this session out, and we're doing the Zoom out.